Welcome everyone. It's just a little bit after 3 o'clock. We are live on Facebook and here on Zoom with Nicole Hamm for another town hall. Nicole Hamm is running for Jacksonville City Council, District 4, and we have a great group gathered on Zoom who are submitting their questions via the chat box. We also have someone monitoring the Facebook feed. So if you're going to drop us questions via Facebook in the comment section on this live feed, feel welcome to. Those will be fed over to Zoom. If you are on Zoom with us, please mute your microphone and use the chat box. If Zoom is new for you, just hover on your screen and the controls will appear so that you can stay muted and discover the chat box. I'm going to hand this right over to Nicole Hamm. I'm going to stop the screen share so that she can get started.
Hi, everyone. Thank you all so much for joining us in our weekly town halls. We've been kind of doing this series to connect and talk about the issues that are plaguing not only District 4, but also Jacksonville. And I'm so honored and grateful to have State Representative Anna Eskamani be with us this afternoon. So Anna has been super vocal and proactive in this unemployment system that a lot of Floridians are facing. And just kind of a little bit of a heads up is I use the Nextdoor app for my neighborhood. So I'm pretty involved in all the general neighborhoods. And we've been seeing a lot of requests for work, handyman work, lawn work, servers out of job, bartenders out of jobs. So I was like, there's a broken system and there is an issue that is plaguing this district. And I know if it's plaguing this district, it's plaguing this city and this state. And just by reading all of the articles and seeing all of these stories, we need to talk about this. We need to figure out what's going on, answer some questions for people that haven't gotten answers, and really dive into how we can, as prospective and elected officials, can be of service for our residents and constituents. So thank you, Anna, for joining us this afternoon. And I'm sure that we've got a lot of questions on the screen and a lot of people interested in what we have to say, but I just wanted to start by acknowledging that there is a problem that we're working on, and how did we get here, one, and then where do we go from here, two, and then we'll have some time for Q&A, and I know we had a couple questions sent via email, and I'm sure we'll see more as we continue this discussion, but let's start there. So the pandemic happened, COVID happened, Florida got hit, boom.
Right. Well, first of all, thank you, Nicole, for the invitation. Thank you for running for office. I know that you are making Jacksonville so proud, and I'm really honored to support you on the campaign trail as well. And this has been a really difficult year for Floridians. We know that even before the pandemic, we have Floridians that are living paycheck to paycheck. Many who can't afford rent, they live in hotels and motels. And of course, for those Floridians that have jobs, they might be working multiple jobs to make ends meet. And the ability to save money is very, very limited in our tourism-driven economy. And so when the pandemic hit Florida, we were hit hard, which led to a flood towards the unemployment system. And I don't have to sugarcoat it for folks that are watching us. The system was designed to fail. It was never built to serve people, especially not a million people. And to that point, in the 2011 legislature, so going back in time a little bit for us, under the leadership of then Governor, now Senator Rick Scott, a new policy was passed on the unemployment system that maintained a cap at $275 a week, which hasn't increased in about a decade, and reduced the amount of weeks from 23 weeks to only 12 weeks, which we can talk about this later, but those 12 weeks can be adjusted in the fourth quarter based on the third quarter's unemployment rate. But ultimately, it was designed to make it very difficult for Floridians who are unemployed to get anything more than 12 weeks. And then the eligibility requirements are very narrow. So what we saw happen in Florida is a wave of folks that were ineligible for unemployment or told they were ineligible when they should have been eligible. And the federal programs have really saved us. And just as a quick recap, there are 3 main federal programs and a 4th one on the way. So we have PUA, which is basically the unemployment program for folks that are self-employed or contract workers. And for those that are ineligible for what's called regular UC or regular unemployment compensation, that's a state program. If you're ineligible for regular UC, in most cases, you could then apply for PUA and potentially be eligible for PUA. Then we have PEUC, which many Floridians are on right now and coming towards the end of it. So PEUC is the extension from regular UC. It gives you an additional 13 weeks of regular unemployment compensation. And then once your PEUC expires, you should be able to then apply for PUA. And then finally, the third program that everyone misses is FPUC. And FPUC or FPUC was the additional $600 provided to Floridians who were receiving unemployment benefits that really helped make sure folks could actually pay their bills on time. It was for a very long time, payments were missing for Floridians too, but those payments expired on July 25th. And right now, Florida is waiting for what's called the Lost Wages Assistance Program out of FEMA. And tomorrow, the Connect website will be offline. And part of the reason why is that there are efforts to update the system so that the Lost Wage Assistance Program can be made available to Floridians. And at this point, we're talking about $300 extra for about 3 weeks for Floridians who are receiving at least $100 in their weekly benefit amount. And so that's a quick overview of just where we've been, you know, the programs that have showed up. But of course, you know, I would be remiss if I didn't say just how challenging this has all been. Our office in District 47 has escalated formally 16,000 claims to DO, but out of all of our different Excel sheets and emails, we've sent 30,000 different claimants to DO, some duplicates. But the reality is that legislative offices across the state of Florida and congressional offices and even city commissioner candidates like yourself have had to step up and fill in the gap because of DO being non-present, customer service close to zero, really create an environment where so much stress that could have been avoided has been the reality. And it's made it even more difficult for Floridians to navigate this crisis.
Yeah, I'm a board member of a local nonprofit called BEAM. It's Beaches Emergency Assistance Ministry, and we do financial assistance. And when I tell you the amount of people just skyrocketed from this pandemic, and you know, we're in these board meetings and we're looking at our finances, and I'm like, this is crazy, you know. And then you start to talk to people and hear where they come from and hear what their struggle is, and a lot of it is, you know, the communication, not hearing back, and a lot of understanding what this process looks like and the timelines that they're being given that you know, are not being followed through. And that's a true problem because people elect leaders and they have leadership in place to support and take care of the people. And it seems that we are not doing the best job that we can as a state to do that.
I would agree with you 100%. I mean, there have been so many moments during this pandemic and moments right now too, where if there was just improved communication, it would have at least alleviated some of the confusion, next steps for the unemployed. And arguably our governor in particular has a very large platform that if he makes a statement, you know, it will be shared. It'll be shared with Floridians. And our reach can only be so far. And so it has been a struggle working with an administration that really didn't want to talk about unemployment because I think because it is such a major crisis that has not been handled well. It's better to ignore it, you know, by state leadership than actually address it. So that's been a reason why I've been so critical of the governor and also critical of the program itself, because we haven't been transparent. We haven't been clear with some of the systems within the unemployment system, and it's caused more chaos than needed to happen. And I'm very hopeful that, you know, now that we're 6 months in, the Lost Wage Assistance Program, for example, I mentioned it's going to be updated into the system tomorrow. We're hearing that folks could receive the $300 payments as soon as late this week. So I'm very hopeful about that. I'm also hopeful it'll be backdated. And by that, I mean, this program can be backdated to August 1st. So I'm hopeful that anyone who is eligible since August 1st will just get a lump sum of $900 versus having to wait, for these weeks to pass for $300 each week. So we're keeping the pressure on. This week, there was also a new executive director announced for DO, and that is Representative Dane Eagle. And I will say, the representative, when in office, he and I disagreed on pretty much every issue there is. But he is a colleague, and I have spoken to him multiple times now. And he wants to hear our ideas. He wants to make the system more responsive. And so we're going to hold him to that. And we're going to continue to amplify the voices of the unemployed and do our part to work with folks like you to make sure the message is shared and that people get the support they need.
Yeah, absolutely. I will say that in my district, District 4 in particular, we have at least two. I've only been to two government housing. What are those called? Little areas, Section 8 housing.
Right.
It's just,
Right.
I was talking to, because I actually had a girlfriend that used to live there with her son. So I remembered some of the neighbors, and, I was, campaigning and called them, talked to them. And she was like, Nicole, it was just another heartbreaking story. She was like, I don't know what to do.
Right.
I work at Copeland. She doesn't have a car. So she was walking up to the local restaurants, and
Right.
restaurant industry is down, and she's not able to, get a hold of anybody to collect unemployment. But the thing that stuck out to me was after all of that, she said, I just want somebody to care enough to listen. And I think that's kind of where my heartstrings just broke, because, it's great to do all of this work, but we really got to listen to people and hear where they're coming from, because there are so many different circumstances and situations. And, even though someone is not paying this, 4-figure, 5-figure mortgage, they need help. They need.
Absolutely, Nicole. And you're right that every issue is so multifaceted. And what we find common with folks that we're serving is that unemployment is probably one of the biggest issues facing them, getting their weeks backdated, being able to see payments come to them directly. But there's also concerns around hunger. There's concerns around eviction and rent, mortgages, folks who need to go to a doctor, they can't afford their medicine. And I don't have a lot of money, but I've given up my state salary to use it as direct cash assistance. And we've also raised money to give out to Floridians as well. And some of the most difficult circumstances have to do with folks who live in hotels and motels because they don't have the protection of a lease. And so when it comes to the current eviction order, both federal now and state, if you live in a hotel motel, you really don't benefit from it as others do. And even if you do benefit, there could be hostile situations where water is turned off or, locks are legally changed. I mean, there's so many other layers to this too. And then of course, utility bills have been a challenge. I do want folks to know that if you're facing a disconnect from your utility company, I know Duke Energy, in particular, just recently announced that they're doing disconnects again. Please email your state lawmaker. Please feel free to email my office as well. We contact that utility company directly on your behalf, and we're often able to get them to turn the power back on, create a payment plan for you. But I've written to the PSC, the Public Service Commission, asking them to halt all disconnects because having electricity is a human necessity, especially in a state like Florida and how hot it is. You cannot live without air conditioning. And so we're doing our best to kind of address all those layers of struggle as much as we can every single day.
Yeah, you hear it all the time, but it is a catch-22.
Right.
If you're worried about other things, of course you're not going to be as productive as at work. If you're not working, you're going to be stressed. And then we talked on Twitter about, the governor applying for, LWA and these heartbreaking stories of people that are making these very tough and unnecessary choices. And my mother is from an HR background of compensation and benefits. So
wow.
I drill her all the time about why is this happening? What does this look like? And it's really hard. And I just wanted to have an open conversation where people could understand the work that's trying to be done to make this better, and also, possibly get some answers. So if you don't mind, we do have a few questions that have been coming in that
I'm ready. Yeah, I'm ready.
And I'll start with one that we got via email. He's on the call, Chris Lambert. He's just asking about how long is it going to take to escalate all these claims? They're escalating, and then what happens next? Why are we not getting communication back? Why is there not an answer to get people what they're owed?
Totally. That's a great question, Chris. So I'll tell you, all weekend, I have been sending more claims to DO. And actually this weekend, they've been pretty responsive to me, and I'm hopeful that'll be a pattern that continues. And so we are seeing claims get escalated, especially regarding back payment, but it's been a challenge. I mean, I think some of DO's biggest barriers in the beginning of this pandemic was they didn't have the staff that were qualified to do any type of work on Connect, and they didn't have the ability for Connect to have multiple people logged in at once. So the capacity for both a unemployed Floridian and an employee of DO to be in the Connect system at the same time was impossible, which is why they started setting up, hours of operation for the website versus when folks are trying to process claims. And it's one reason why the website will be closed tomorrow for the Lost Wage Assistance Program, because they literally can't do everything at once. And that speaks to our lack of investment in technology in the modern age to actually allow multiple users from different sides to be able to use this system clearly. And so I think it's going to take a few more weeks for every claim to actually be backdated. But I do encourage folks to contact their state lawmakers. I have seen a lot of success in state lawmakers pushing DO, being an advocate for you, and getting results. One quick example I'll give from today, and actually yesterday too, there's been a 4 to 5 urgent claims that I've been trying to get DO to pay attention to from our district, and it probably took 3 to 4 weeks for them to move on these claims. And so it's almost like there is no pattern. Like, I wish I could give you a pattern to say, if you call this number or if you email this person, you're going to see results in 48 hours. Like, I wish it was that easy, but I will say that we are seeing results, and don't be shy to pester people like me, because I get flooded with messages. And so honestly, like, the more I see it, the more I'm going to be able to get you to DO. So don't be shy to hold folks accountable. Don't be shy to be persistent in your self-advocacy. And then of course, whatever information you have, share it with others. These Facebook groups in particular that have formed have provided an informal network of support for the unemployed. And that's just remarkable. I mean, the type of back and forth support that Floridians have given each other is a reflection of how strong we are as people. And that is something I'm very proud of too.
Yeah. Lisa, are there any questions in the chat?
Yes, there's been quite a few comments that are worth sharing. One, I'm going to work backwards, so I apologize. From an individual in Miami said, I contacted Frederica Wilson and Senator Rubio and actually got a response from them. I also wrote to Anna Eskamani, and she helped tremendously. So, what Anna's saying is right on spot. You have to be your own best advocate. From Greg, we're hearing from via Facebook, he wonders, are politicians really listening to the people? And what he wants are elected officials who do listen.
Right.
Let me keep going. We've got another message from someone who says that they had a 3-day notice to quit placed on their apartment door yesterday. I also see on Facebook, this is an interesting one that might be worth discussing. Talquin has disconnected me twice. This is a person named Christy mentioning this on Facebook, that they've been disconnected twice during the pandemic. And then when there's a reconnect, there's a $60 charge.
Wow.
That would be an interesting thing to figure out, like, how could that not happen? Is there any sort of plan or idea about that?
Right. So let me touch on lawmakers listening, or politicians listening rather, and the 3-day notice, and then we'll talk about that disconnect and the fee to reconnect, which is ridiculous. So are lawmakers or politicians listening? So the first thing I'll say is that you got two right here who definitely are. You know, Nicole is running for office, and she cares deeply about the community, and we need more Nicoles in office. And for our office, we are here, we are fighting. I will say we have been flooded with messages to the point where back in May, in an effort to keep up with the flow, you know, to give an example, we escalated about 8,300 just the month of June. So over 8,000 people we sent to DO just in June based on our internal data. And so this only happened because of volunteers helping us send people to DO. We had volunteers go through my inbox and actually collect people's information. They signed, you know, NDAs to protect people's privacy, but we needed extra hands because a legislative office only has 3 people, including me, if you're a state house rep. State senators have a little bit more staff, but we're all pretty small. And so we engaged volunteers to help us. We started doing a escalation form that we shared online, and we shared through my automatic response, just in an effort to get people to DO as fast as possible versus waiting to hear directly from me, because the flow was just so high that I couldn't respond to everyone directly. And so I want to be clear too that, you know, even if you don't get an email back, if you've been able to at least get some sort of documentation that your claim was escalated, that's a step in the right direction. But again, don't be shy, especially with folks like me. I love hearing from you. Like, check in, right? Poke and check in. Lawmakers are on social media, politicians are on social media, tweet at us, talk to us. And if you're not getting a response back, then that speaks to that person's inability to be fit for their role, and they probably shouldn't be in office in the first place, right? Now, to the 3-day eviction notice, I think that's what BJ is referring to. That is super frustrating. I want you to know a few things here in Florida. So we have a statewide executive order on evictions and foreclosures. And what the statewide order does is that if you receive a 5-day eviction notice, which is what comes after the 3-day eviction notice, that if you file a motion to determine rent with the court, demonstrating that you are adversely affected by COVID-19, then you can be protected and you will not be evicted. You still have to pay back that rent. So please remember that none of these moratoriums or protections are rent cancellation. The rent still has to be paid, but it does provide you with more time to make those payments. And the governor, after a lot of public pressure, he extended the eviction moratorium. Well, the executive order, I don't like calling it a moratorium because you still have to file a motion with the court. If you don't do that, you could still be evicted. But that has been extended till beginning of October. Last week, the CDC announced major news that the CDC is using their authority to halt evictions for public health. And so this is a big deal. This impacts every renter in the country. It's probably the closest thing we've ever had to a nationwide halt on evictions. But you have to be adversely financially impacted by COVID-19, and you have to file a declaration stating that point. And there's a lot of great resources online to help you do that. I encourage folks who are facing an eviction or an eviction notice to contact your legal aid community, contact pro bono legal aid to really be your advocate and to give you these next steps. But there's some great resources already out there. We've shared it on our social media outlets where you can seek that protection from an eviction and not lose your home during this pandemic. And then finally, the last question that you lifted up, Lisa, around disconnects, I'm gonna toss to Nicole too, because she might have some more perspective on this one. But if you're being charged a disconnect and connect fee and things like that, I'm gonna echo my last statement. Please contact a state lawmaker because we can try to help get that canceled. I had a constituent who was facing overdraft fees with their bank, and we were able to contact the lobbyist at Bank of America and basically get that eliminated. So there are unfortunately no formulas for these problems. Everything is so case by case, but contact a lawmaker, get an advocate on your side, and we'll always do our best to help.
Yeah, I echo that as well. And, you know, just kind of more on a local level, you know, being on the board, it's at the beach, so it's not in my district, but we've been talking to Beaches Energy about, you know, why, why are you guys still, you know, going after people that are trying to just make it another hour, right? And, you know, the same with JEA, you know, we did have an instance where they did pause, you know, in the early spring, but they started, you know, requesting money again to pay their bills. And you've got to, I think it irritates me as a candidate, because it's, you know, if we just take a moment and understand that the CDC just said like evictions are going to be a health issue, but you've got electricity companies wanting to cut off electric. So you've got people that are going to be in a place with no electricity, no air, and it's hurricane season. So it's just, you know, I want to bring an office that, that relatability just as a person. You know, I live alone and I pay JEA every month, and I can't imagine, you know, what my mother, you know, probably, you know, my mom was a single mom. If it was just the two of us in this condo and something happened where she wasn't working, I mean, what do? The air, you got to pay for air in Florida. It's hot. Right. No one's not leave the air off. And I'm happy to share anyone on a local level, or actually we can share in the Facebook group a list of state reps by district, so you guys can know who your local lawmakers are if you don't already. And then, you know, it's just specifically to a Jacksonville issue is you want leaders that are going to begin to push these issues and begin to have these conversations. And the conversations that I've had with our organization at Beaches Energy, I've been putting in my mentor's ear that works at JEA about how do we get this to work? What can we do better? What can city council push for? You know, what can we begin to advocate for to take care of the people that live right in our backyard? So, you know, to speak to that, that's where we are. And that's why we want to give you guys the answers. And we want to have these open dialogues, because your lawmakers and your elected officials have to know what's going on so they can support you. And again, I'm happy to share that list of lawmakers on every level, House, Florida Senate. If you want to go all the way up the chain, U.S. House, U.S. Senate. But you know, unfortunately, sometimes you have to be the squeaky wheel that gets the oil. You have to keep poking and prodding and yelling and screaming to get it. And I know that's unfortunate, but send it to your lawmakers, send it to your elected officials. They signed up on day one to represent you. So you push that to them and you let them know that you need support and you need help. And as an elected official, being a servant leader, they're going to step in. At least I would hope they would step in. And I'm pleased, you know, that Anna has, and even though she's not my local lawmaker, she's a lawmaker that I respect and look up to. So again, just thank you for having this conversation. And I know we have some more questions popping through.
Yeah, Nicole, this is an interesting one because it's local. This is from Tommy on Facebook, and he says, I would like to know, if you are elected to city council, what would you do to address the JEA surcharges that they are adding to our bills? My monthly bill used to range between $160 to $200, but in the last 4 months, I've been paying between $380 to $430.
That's pure insanity. That is just, what I will say is, if I were to be elected to city council, that we need to do some digging. We need to do some digging on what our financial footprint looks like, and what we've been doing to not have these bottlenecks in the first place. We were dealing with JEA and dealing with people not having access and getting disconnected before the pandemic even hit. So we were already behind the 8 ball when this started. And so now we're, instead of being able to support, we're trying to play catch up. And that's why they restarted, you know, requesting monthly bills. I would have to look at your particular bill about why the surcharge is that high. Something just doesn't sound right to me about that. I'm curious if that's a human error, or if that's what kind of mathematical formula they've used to create that particular surcharge, because I was under the impression that it was a flat fee. So I might have the wrong information. So I am happy to look into that and double check. So I can do that, but I would definitely push to make sure that we are doing things in our budget to make sure that we're not behind the 8 ball and trying to play catch up when we really should just be able to support people and figure out how we're going to continue to support people, because we don't know what this looks like, right? So and it's hurricane season. We're dealing with this at some of the times where this shouldn't be something that people are worried about. People are already worried about school. They're already worried about their health. They're already worried about all these other things. The last thing they should be worried about, if they're going to have lights for their kids to do Duval homeroom and air to sleep comfortably at night, and have that support from an electric company that the public actually owns. So I will do some research and digging on that. But as an elected official, I would definitely go back into the budget and look at our financial footprint and make sure that we have everything available and ready to be of support in another pandemic or another crisis. So I'm willing and happy to look into that. And if you'll drop your contact or email info in the chat, I'll look into that and I'll follow up with you as soon as I have an answer.
Thank you. We have about a minute or so left before we'll be transitioning out of conversation. An interesting question that's come in because it's election season is how can we support Democrats all up and down the ballot this fall? Someone's asking if we can talk about vote by mail. So shifting gears here for a moment off of unemployment to, how do we get elected officials into office that are willing to engage and listen and follow through with action?
Yeah, it's a great question. I also saw a question from Bob around does DeSantis actually care about fixing the unemployment system? And I think these are all kind of questions kind of along the same line of thinking of folks super frustrated with just the same old politics, right? And people that either make empty promises or bend over backward for corporations while leaving everyday people behind. And I do think that our governors, as one quick example, he's made it pretty clear that he sides with the biggest corporations from the beginning. I mean, the Florida Chamber led the conversation on reopening Florida. It wasn't doctors who did that. And the unemployment system, as I mentioned earlier, the governor doesn't really talk about it that much. And I have no doubt for politicians that are not responsive on this issue, it's often because they realize how bad it is and they don't want to address it because sometimes they were some of the creators of this broken system. And they feel like it's politically advantageous to them to just ignore it versus actually talk about it and address it. And that's a shame because, I do think even if you voted for the 2011 bill, you play a leading role in trying to fix it now, and you should. Even if in the past you voted for this really bad changes to the system that leave us where we are today. Now, to the point of elections in general and then vote by mail. I'm someone who is very critical of our own party as well. And so folks who follow me online know that I hold Democrats accountable, just like I hold my Republican colleagues accountable. And so I really encourage folks to always research the candidates, right? Research your candidates, know where they stand on issues. Nicole Hamm is so accessible. And she's already looking into people's, GE issues. And that is such a testament to who she is as a person and who she will be as your next commissioner. And so you really want to get to know who's running, who's on your ballot, do that research, and then whatever capacity you have to volunteer on a campaign, you should. And obviously COVID-19 makes it more challenging to volunteer in this environment, but there's plenty of virtual opportunities, there's socially distanced opportunities, and candidates need you on the ground and need you on the phone and need you to spread the gospel and help navigate campaign season during this pandemic. Vote by mail is something that we continue to encourage, but with caution, because we all know the post office has been in the news a lot. There's a lot of concern about the post office's ability to mail in ballots on time during this pandemic, during a moment of a growth in vote by mail. So a few quick thoughts, and I'll toss it to Nicole. One is, even if you request a vote by mail ballot, you don't have to vote by mail, right? You can drop off that ballot at drop off locations. You can actually turn in that ballot on election day for on election day ballot. And so I think a vote by mail ballot is it's kind of like plan A, but keep in mind you have plan B and plan C already in play in case you need to use as alternatives. But requesting it is smart because you just don't know what's going to happen between now and November. And you can request vote by mail ballot, have it on hand. The second it comes in, you should try to mail it. And when you mail it back in, you can track it online too. So you can see its status and follow it on your local county supervisor of elections website. And then if you're not comfortable vote by mail, like I said, you can still request it and then drop it off. Early vote locations often serve as drop-off locations. So does your supervisor of elections office. And then finally, if that didn't work out, you can vote on election day at your polling location and basically exchange your vote by mail ballot for a regular ballot. So a lot of important ways that you can vote. It's good to know all options, and contact your local Democratic Party or county supervisor of elections office if you have more questions too.
Yeah, and just really fast, like on a local level, I think Daniel Henry snuck in here, and he is our chairman of the Duval Democratic Party. So he is extremely accessible. The party is extremely accessible. So if you do have any questions on a local level as far as Duval and opportunities to help candidates up and down the ballot, that is probably your best resource to start. And Daniel does a great job of bringing all down ballot candidates together and doing a collective effort to do that work. So I would invite you to start there with the DEC. So where are we at on time, Lisa? How are we?
We need to head out pretty soon. So I wanted to just encourage everybody to learn more about Nicole Hamm on her website, which is NicoleHamm.com. And coming up, she has a fun event moving through District 4, which is called Pedaling for Progress, which is bicycling actually through the district to encourage awareness about District 4, as well as support local small businesses. As well, we would love for you to volunteer, as Nicole just mentioned, for the campaign. So if that's of interest to you, you can go to the website and fill out the volunteer application form. You can certainly also donate, and doing either of those, you'll start receiving the weekly newsletter from Nicole. Next week, we have a town hall with Nicole Hamm, Sunday, September 13th at 3 p.m. And she will be talking with a local small business owner who has been impacted during this time economically, and also share some strategies for navigating this time period. So vote for Nicole Hamm on November 3rd. Get involved, research your candidates, and I'm going to toss this back over to Nicole for final farewells.
Thank you so much, Lisa. Lisa is such an integral part of our communications team for this campaign. So thank you for all that you do and all the support that you give. Anna, thank you so much for coming out and speaking with us this afternoon. This is such an important subject and such a problem that we need to make sure people have access and that transparency and accountability. And I appreciate all of your knowledge and all of your efforts and supporting our Floridians to navigate this pandemic and hopefully end up better on the other side of it.
Absolutely. I'm really proud to be doing this work. I'm really proud to join you hand in hand, and Jacksonville is very lucky to have you on the ballot. And so much love to everyone, and please keep in touch. You can find us on Facebook as well, Representative Anna V. Eskamani, and my email is just my name. So if you need me, it's anna.eskamani@myfloridahouse.gov.
Awesome. Well, thank you all so much. Have a great Labor Day. Thank you to the unions and the heart of the movement for making America run and doing all of the things that it's done. And if you're working class or we're working class and this pandemic has you off your feet for just a little bit, stay strong. Help is on the way. We're all going to come together and we're all going to be able to end up better at the end of this. So thank you. Have a wonderful Sunday, and we'll talk to you all soon.